EMRAD is the East Midlands imaging network. We've had a slightly checkered history, but we now cover 8 NHS trusts. We have a huge chunk of the imaging that goes through NHS servers. Up to about 1 in 12 images comes through ours. We've got massive piles of data kicking around, and a long history going back to at least 2013 of all of the imaging. These are the trusts that we cover. I'll give you a moment to have a look at those. As I say, we do have a checkered history. We started in 2013, essentially as a procurement process when NP Fit and that were winding down, and the regional PACS and RIS contracts were coming to an end at exactly the same date. So a bright spark realised that we could perhaps save a bit of money on the procurement, and very quickly from there realised that we could actually share stuff and work together clinically, and we've grown out of that. We very early on set up a strong governance structure, which we've still got running at this stage, which has probably been the secret to our success. And we wanted to get to the stage where any image could be seen anytime, anywhere in the region. We are there now, just about. And I think our next phase is really going to be all about data, and I'll show you some of the things that we're going to be working on in the near future. There's our governance structure. I can talk to you more about that if you'd like, but I think you're probably more interested in this and what kind of data we have. We have a slightly complicated architecture, and there is a central data center, and 6 trusts connect to that with a vendor neutral archive that has everything in it. 2 trusts are slightly separate from that, but we can get a hold of their data, both metadata and pixel data. And there are complicated workarounds with logins in some places, but by and large, we've got everything, or we've got access to everything. And then there's some other products that produce data in a different way that we can access. And it might be most helpful to think of it through as a patient journey going through radiology. And this is the kind of thing that might happen to someone. They'll have a request come through, which is then looked at and justified and appointed. They pitch up, they have their images acquired. They go off to store. At some point, someone reads them and publishes a report on them, and that goes back into the notes. There are various systems that we use at these stages, and the ones that can extract the data, we talk about the RIS, which is the Radiology Information System. We use a product called CRIS across most of the region, and that feeds into a BI tool that's supplied by our prime supplier that lets us poll any of the metadata around these bits. We have a clinical decision support program called iRefer, which has been rolled out over the last couple of years after a mandate by NHSE, which produces its own data. We externally share some stuff, and that's to do with the modalities and how much radiation we're using, as well as increasingly so with AI programs that are coming online and dealing with, again, metadata and pixel data. On top of that, we layer some educational stuff. But this RIS is the workhorse of everything that we do. It's got access to just about every piece of data you could want from an imaging service. It's very well used, very well understood, but it is slightly cumbersome, unfortunately. So we've built on top of that this online BI tool, which improves the way that we can scrutinize that data. And at the moment, we've got a huge suite of dashboards which are accessible by the trusts that give back almost real-time data. So the BI tool database refreshes overnight. So at worst, it's going to be kind of 20 hours old. Here's an example of a dashboard that we can create. This one happens to be looking at predicted capacity and demand. And you'll see, I don't know, can you see my mouse pointer? Is it moving around?
Yeah, Ian, we can see that.
Good. So the capacity over here is a prediction based on historic data and looking at how many reports we did at a point in the week during the last year. We can kind of expand that if we need to. Over here on the right, the demand is actual data of how many studies we've done. So this is one example where you can compare the two, and you can say, okay, well, on average, we're doing north of 21,000 plain film reports a month, and our reporting capacity is just north of that. So in reality, if we don't change anything, the backlog's never going to come down. And the same is true over CT and over MR. And down here, in there is again a prediction looking at the rate at that we produce reports, how long it will take to clear those backlogs. There's a million different ways you can skin a cat. The trusts, by and large, love these dashboards, and I think they're incredibly useful. If I can use it. And one of the other bits that we use them for is something called insourcing, which is effectively where we use our own reporters out of hours to do a fee per item service of reporting. Very successful financially, has been used in the past to target backlogs very effectively, but starting to creak just a little bit at the moment. I'm not going to talk too much more about that. A couple more examples of the other things that we can see. iRefer is a, at the moment, largely primary care based tool that helps guide clinicians through the requesting process, and it'll rate the request as appropriate or inappropriate effectively. So it doesn't stop them doing anything, but it does flag them up. It started in primary care, is being rolled out across the region into secondary care in some places at the moment through various modalities. And this will produce some fantastic looking dashboards with very weird terminology. But effectively, as we go from left to right across the top and across the bottom, you will see that these coloured sections of the bar of the pie chart get smaller and smaller, which means that the percentage of requests that are potentially inappropriate is getting smaller. Hopefully that means our requesters are doing things more appropriately. The cynical among you may say that that's actually them just gaming the system, but hey ho, there is more work going in that, and I'll be fascinated to see how this works in secondary care. Lastly, a little bit about some of the other things. Dose monitoring just pulls off the stats from the modalities and stores them. We are looking at ways of improving external sharing, because at the minute trying to get images and reports out to various bodies and images and reports back in is not great. And then there's the perennial question of AI and whether we use it for image reading, where it helps in our kind of processes, what kind of structure we can put in place around those. I think those are still open questions at the moment. Alerting and that I'm not going to talk about. But thinking about AI, one of the things we did wonder is if this huge pile of data that we've got could be potentially useful. So we've been through a data assessment exercise, which surprisingly for the NHS wasn't too bad. It identified areas of weakness, which we are starting to work on. Some of them are very American, so we're not so fussed about that. But standardization of the kind of data fields is a big topic currently. And once we're a bit more standard with that, then it becomes a lot easier to pull out similarities that we might think, okay, this is an area that we can exploit. If we've got 6 different trusts all using the same imaging protocol, then those images become much more powerful. The trouble is image pixel data on its own isn't fantastically useful unless you're dealing just with images. So what would be even better would be to link in with the wider clinical records. And I think many of you will be aware of the SDE talk that's going on at the moment. It looked like you've got a talk from the SDE guys next month. So again, I'm not going to dwell too long on this, but just to say we are expecting to function as the subnational SDE imaging kind of portion for the East Midlands. So it's an area that we're very interested in, that we are trying to kind of get control over, but because of the national edict is slightly muddy at the minute.